The sky above the ruined planet was a storm of fire and smoke, ripped apart by the relentless fury of bolter fire and screaming engines of war. Dropships tore through the thick black clouds, their hulls scarred by incoming fire, as squads of space marines descended onto the blasted surface below. The ground shook with every explosion, throwing debris high into the acrid air, and the cries of the dying echoed across the shattered valleys. In the midst of the chaos, a squad of ultramarines pressed forward, their ceramite armor gleaming faintly through the haze of smoke, bolters spitting death at the oncoming horde of mutant Xenos. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the very planet resisted their presence, groaning beneath the weight of war. Amidst the carnage, a distant, unnatural glow began to pierce the smoke, a strange, pulsing light emanating from the heart of a crumbling citadel, drawing the attention of every warrior on the field. Curiosity and dread mixed in equal measure as Sergeant Cale led his squad toward the source, cautious but compelled by something they could not name. The glow grew stronger, revealing an ancient artifact half buried beneath the rubble, etched with symbols that seemed to shift and writhe when observed directly. Its power was palpable, tugging at the mind, whispering secrets long buried in the annals of the Imperium. The squad paused, weapons at the ready, scanning for enemies, yet the battlefield around them seemed to momentarily quiet, as if the planet itself held its breath. Then, with a shuddering roar, the artifact pulsed again, sending waves of energy across the plains, knocking Marines and Xenos alike off their feet. Sparks of golden light danced across Cale's armor, leaving a tingling sensation that resonated deep within his chest, stirring memories he could not place. As the squad recovered, a figure stumbled from the shadows, a tech priest, his robes torn, circuitry sparking, eyes wide with panic. He was never found," the priest rasped, clutching at a data slate that shimmered with forbidden knowledge. "The one the Emperor hid. He will return, and all will change." The words struck Cale with the weight of prophecy, each syllable hammering at his sense of duty and fear. A sudden roar of engines heralded the arrival of reinforcements from both friend and foe. Chaos cultists, sensing the artifact's power, swarmed from the smoke, their eyes alight with madness and greed. Bolters roared and combat erupted anew, but Cale's gaze remained fixed on the artifact, the strange figure it seemed to summon within his mind. Then, as if responding to some ancient call, the ground cracked violently, and a beam of blinding light shot skyward, illuminating the battlefield in unholy brilliance. Shadows twisted, and for a fleeting moment Cale glimpsed a figure, immense, armored, and impossibly regal, standing amidst the ruins, radiating power that defied comprehension. The roar of war faded behind him as all eyes, friend and foe alike, turned toward this singular presence. The storm of violence continued, but now it was not the battle that commanded attention. It was the promise of a secret long lost, a Primarch hidden from history, whose return could reshape the fate of the galaxy itself. And in that instant, every soldier knew that nothing would ever be the same.
The aftermath of the artifact's awakening left the battlefield scarred beyond recognition. Fires burned unchecked, consuming the twisted wreckage of ruined tanks and the bodies of fallen Xenos and humans alike. Sergeant Cale and his remaining squad moved cautiously among the wreckage, their ceramite armor scarred and blackened, each step crunching over the remains of shattered machinery and the ash of those who had fallen moments before. The artifact had gone silent, yet its memory lingered in the air like a living thing, tugging at the minds of all who had witnessed its awakening. Cale could feel it in his bones, a subtle vibration that seemed to hum through the very metal of his armor, a reminder that what they had seen was no mere weapon or relic, but something far older, far greater. The tech priest, barely able to stand, shuffled alongside them, muttering prayers and warnings, clutching the glowing data slate like a talisman. The squad's mission had shifted in an instant. No longer were they merely soldiers fighting to hold a world against invaders. They were now seekers of truth, custodians of a secret that the Imperium had long buried. The data slate, humming faintly, contained fragments of information about a Primarch thought lost to history, a shadow among legends. The texts were incomplete, coded in cryptic scripts and interspersed with warnings etched in fear and reverence. KL felt the weight of responsibility pressing down upon him. This was not just a mission, it was a chance to uncover the hidden truth behind the Emperor's greatest and most secretive creation. Every squad member could feel it. This Primarch, whoever he was, had the potential to reshape the Imperium, to tip the scales of power across the galaxy. As they moved toward a safer location, the squad entered a ravaged city, its streets littered with the corpses of Xenos, civilians, and their own brethren. Buildings, half collapsed and scorched, leaned precariously over streets cracked by the relentless shock waves of combat. In the silence between distant gunfire and the crackle of fires, KL could hear whispers, not voices, but a faint echoing in his mind, like memories not his own brushing against his consciousness. It was the artifact's influence, subtle yet insistent, stirring something deep within him. Librarian Corvin, a psychic of the squad, paused mid-step, his eyes rolling back as he muttered an incantation, sensing threads of the warp woven into the air. "It is awakening," he said, his voice tight with fear. "The Primarch's presence, it calls to us. We are being drawn into something far greater than this battle." The squad reached the remains of a grand cathedral at the city's heart, its towers shattered, stained glass shattered into glittering shards across the stone floor. Here, the group could establish a temporary command center, shielded from the chaotic energies that still simmered across the planet's surface. KL ordered the tech priest to stabilize the data slate and begin decoding the information stored within. Sparks of light flickered from the device as the priest worked, arcane symbols forming in mid-air, glowing with a strange, almost alien energy. The air around them grew heavy with anticipation, as if the planet itself waited with bated breath. Slowly, piece by piece, fragments of the lost Primarch's story began to surface. An impossible tale of a warrior who had disappeared during the Emperor's Great Crusade, whose existence had been erased from official records. According to the texts, this Primarch had not simply vanished, he had been hidden deliberately, removed from the Imperium's history for reasons unknown. Some passages hinted at his unmatched strength, others at his psychic brilliance, and yet others warned of a will so independent that even the Emperor had found it impossible to control. The Codex implied that this Primarch had been entrusted with a secret, a plan that, if revealed, could destabilize the Imperium or elevate it beyond imagination. KL felt a shiver run down his spine. Such power, left unchecked, was a double-edged sword. The squad's mission had grown exponentially more perilous. They were no longer merely soldiers. They were the custodians of a galaxy-altering secret.
Night fell on the ravaged city, and the squad huddled within the cathedral ruins, alert to every shadow. The distant screams of war continued, but now there was a new danger. Forces who knew of the Primarch's existence and sought to claim him for their own. Chaos cults, renegade inquisitors, and alien agents all moved with single-minded purpose to intercept Imperial efforts. Kale's mind raced, considering every possibility, every potential betrayal, every threat lurking beyond the crumbling walls. Librarian Corvin remained at the data slate, his psychic senses probing for the faintest traces of the Primarch's presence. The more he probed, the more he felt a pull, a thread connecting them to a world untouched by the war they had just endured. A world where the Primarch may still slumber, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Hours passed as the tech priest continued decoding, revealing star charts, coordinates, and cryptic messages hidden within layers of encryption. Kale studied them, noting planets long forgotten by the Imperium, worlds erased from official maps. These were not just the haunts of the lost Primarch, they were traps, tests, and guardians of knowledge the Imperium was never meant to reclaim. As the squad absorbed the information, a sense of urgency settled over them. Every second wasted could allow Chaos forces to reach the same knowledge, to manipulate or destroy the Primarch before he could even awaken. Decisions had to be made swiftly, yet carefully. One misstep could doom the mission and perhaps the galaxy itself. Finally, the artifact began to react again, subtly this time, casting long, flickering shadows across the ruined cathedral. Its energy resonated with the data slate, harmonizing with the star charts in a way that suggested they were meant to guide the squad, not just to reveal a secret, but to lead them on a journey. Cale felt it in his chest, a strange warmth mingled with fear, an undeniable pull toward the unknown. The squad, once soldiers fighting for survival, now understood that they were participants in something far larger, a hunt for a lost godlike figure, a Primarch who had the power to redefine loyalty, war, and destiny. And as they set their course towards the first coordinates, the winds outside the cathedral carried whispers of a legend long buried, stirring the ashes of a galaxy on the edge of revelation. Every shadow, every spark, every heartbeat of the squad seemed aligned with a singular truth. The lost Primarch was not a myth. He was real, he was powerful, and he was about to change everything. The squad left the ruins of the cathedral behind, moving across the scarred landscape with a mixture of determination and unease. The coordinates revealed by the artifact led them to a planet long erased from the Imperium's maps, a desolate world on the edge of known space. Its surface was a patchwork of jagged mountains and endless ash plains, a place where even the warp seemed hesitant to linger. Dropships descended from orbit, kicking up clouds of blackened dust, and the squad disembarked with weapons ready, every sense alert to both natural hazards and unseen enemies. Cale's mind raced, aware that this hunt was no longer just a mission, it had become a race against time. Every movement they made could alert rival factions, every misstep could cost them the lost Primarch and the fate of the Imperium itself. The journey inland was treacherous. Acid rains fell intermittently, sizzling against their armor, and the wind carried whispers of ancient voices, remnants of a civilization that had long vanished. Strange, jagged structures rose from the ground, their purposes unknown, etched with symbols that mirrored those on the artifact. Librarian Corvan sensed something in the air, threads of psychic energy that flickered like dying embers. "We are close," he murmured, eyes glowing faintly. "He is near. The warp itself reacts to his presence." Cale nodded, gripping his bolter tightly. He could feel it too, the pull of something impossibly powerful just beyond the horizon, calling to them, drawing them forward with a force that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Their first obstacle appeared as they reached a canyon that split the ash plains like a jagged scar. Across the chasm, Chaos cultists had established a forward camp, their fires flickering like eyes in the darkness. They were aware of the artifact, aware of the Primarch, and they would stop at nothing to claim him for their dark masters. Cale gestured for silence, and the squad began a slow, calculated advance, using the shadows of the canyon walls as cover. Every step was measured, every breath held as they closed the distance. Then, without warning, the cultists detected their movement. Screams shattered the night as bolters and lasguns erupted, turning the canyon into a hellscape of fire and smoke. Cale led the charge, the squad moving as a single, precise unit. Bolter fire tore through the cultists, while Librarian Corvan unleashed psychic waves that sent enemies flying against the jagged canyon walls. The tech priest's servo-alarms flared with power, cutting down foes and stabilizing the squad's movement. It was a battle of precision, skill, and sheer willpower, and for every cultist that fell, Cale could feel the artifact's pull growing stronger. It was as though the lost Primarch's presence resonated through the air, guiding their movements and pushing them toward their destination. After the skirmish, the squad paused to regroup. The cultists' threat had been neutralized, but the battle had left its mark. Smoke, blood, and the faint psychic echo of those who had perished clung to the canyon. Corvan approached the artifact, now activated again, and placed a hand upon its surface. A vision flickered in his mind, a fortress hidden in the mountains beyond, half buried in ice and stone, guarded by traps and mechanisms that had withstood millennia. It was the first tangible clue to the lost Primarch's resting place. Cale's heart pounded. They were closer than ever, yet the danger had only increased. Every rival faction in the sector would converge upon this location once they sensed the same energy. The trek to the fortress was relentless. Avalanches of ice, sudden sinkholes, and roving packs of corrupted wildlife turned the journey into a gauntlet. The squad pressed on, bolters ready, scanning every shadow for signs of enemy ambush. Corvan's psychic senses continued to guide them, threading a path through the treacherous terrain. At night, they camped in frozen caves, the wind howling like lost souls outside. Around the fire, they pored over fragments of the data slate, piecing together cryptic messages from long-dead scribes and explorers. The more they learned, the clearer it became. This lost Primarch was unlike any other. Not merely a warrior, but a being whose destiny had been deliberately erased, whose existence carried secrets powerful enough to shift the balance of the galaxy. Finally, after days of perilous travel, they reached the fortress itself, a massive structure carved from black stone, half swallowed by glaciers and crowned with jagged spires. Its walls were etched with symbols that seemed to writhe when observed directly, and the air around it hummed with latent energy. As they approached, Cale felt a tremor in his chest, a resonance that mirrored the pull of the artifact. Librarian Corvan warned them in hushed tones. "This is no ordinary fortress. It is alive in the warp. It will test us, challenge us. Only those who prove themselves worthy may enter." Cale glanced at his squad, seeing fear, determination, and unspoken understanding mirrored in every face. They were about to step into history itself, walking the path toward a legend long thought lost. Chaos forces, too, had arrived. From the glaciers, robed figures emerged, chanting in guttural tongues, their eyes glowing with unholy light. The two sides clashed instantly. Bolters roared, and psychic blasts tore through the air, shaking the fortress walls. Cale's squad fought with desperate skill, the battle ebbing and flowing like a tide of death. Every victory brought them closer. Every casualty reminded them of the stakes. The lost Primarch would awaken soon, and if chaos reached him first, the Imperium could be undone. The fighting was brutal, cinematic in scale, each moment a test of strategy, courage, and sheer willpower. When the final Chaos champion fell, silence returned, eerie, almost reverent. The fortress loomed before them, imposing and enigmatic, as if daring them to enter. Cale felt the artifact grow warm in his hands, pulsing in resonance with the structure. The path was clear. They were the first of the living to approach the resting place of the lost Primarch in centuries. And yet, Cale understood instinctively that this was only the beginning. The hunt had brought them here, but the awakening, the true confrontation with destiny, was yet to come. As the squad moved to cross the fortress threshold, the winds carried a whisper of prophecy, a single truth that lingered in the cold air. The galaxy would never be the same again, and the lost Primarch's choice would shape the fate of all. The fortress loomed like a monument to a forgotten age, half buried in ice and shadow, its spires clawing at the storm-heavy sky. Cale and his squad paused at the threshold, every sense straining against the unnatural stillness that hung around the structure. The artifact pulsed violently now, thrumming in resonance with the fortress walls as though recognizing its counterpart within. Librarian Corvan stepped forward, eyes alight with psychic energy, and whispered, "The Primarch waits inside, not asleep, not gone, only hidden, and he knows we are here." Kale gripped his bolter, the weight of what they were about to face pressing down on him. Every step forward was a step into legend, into danger, and perhaps into doom. As they crossed the threshold, the air thickened, charged with energies that made their hair stand on end. The interior of the fortress was unlike anything they had encountered. Walls of blackened stone etched with ever-shifting symbols, corridors twisting in ways that defied geometry, and an oppressive silence that seemed to absorb sound. Every footstep echoed unnaturally, reverberating as if the fortress itself were aware of their presence. Shadows moved at the corner of their vision, flickering but never fully revealing themselves. The squad pressed on, Librarian Corvon reading the psychic currents, guiding them past traps and illusions designed to test the mind and spirit. Kale could feel his heartbeat in his ears, a steady drumbeat of tension as they descended deeper into the heart of the ancient structure. Finally, they reached a chamber unlike any other. A colossal hall, circular and domed, stretched above them, lit by a faint, otherworldly glow emanating from a crystalline sarcophagus at its center. The air shimmered with latent psychic power, heavy with the weight of centuries. The artifact responded violently now, lifting slightly from Kale's hands as if trying to merge with the energy of the sarcophagus. Librarian Corvon extended his hands, muttering in the ancient tongues of the Emperor's libraries, and the walls themselves seemed to pulse in recognition. Kale and his squad felt an almost magnetic pull, urging them forward, yet warning them of the danger that lay ahead. Before anyone could speak, a tremor shook the chamber, and cracks appeared along the crystalline sarcophagus. Light spilled outward, blinding in its intensity, and the artifact in Kale's hands shone in response, connecting in a beam of energy with the crystal. From within, a form began to emerge, a towering figure of ceramite armor, humanoid but impossibly larger than any space marine. His presence was overwhelming, radiating power that pressed against the mind, body, and soul. The lost Primarch had awoken. Every squad member felt a shiver run down their spines. This was not merely a warrior, but a living god among men, a force whose very existence warped reality around him. The Primarch's eyes opened, twin orbs of piercing light that seemed to see through everything, the squad, the fortress, even the threads of fate itself. He rose slowly, his movements deliberate yet impossibly fast, radiating authority and an alien majesty that made even the most battle-hardened space marines kneel instinctively. His voice, when it came, was deep, resonant, carrying both command and curiosity. "Who disturbs my slumber?" Every word reverberated through the chamber, shaking the stone floors and echoing in the minds of those present. Kael stepped forward, bolter raised but trembling slightly. We are agents of the Imperium. We seek knowledge of you, Primarch. We seek your aid." The Primarch regarded them silently for a heartbeat that stretched into eternity. Then, as if testing their resolve, he moved. The air itself seemed to recoil, and Librarian Corvon was thrown back by a sudden psychic surge. Bolts of energy danced across the hall as the Primarch raised a hand, deflecting attacks that had not yet come, demonstrating a mastery over both psychic and physical realms that left the squad awestruck. Kael's squad responded instinctively, forming a defensive perimeter, while also marveling at the sheer magnitude of their charge. The Primarch was not an enemy, yet not fully an ally either. He was a force of nature, unpredictable and incomprehensible. Chaos forces, having tracked the squad, finally breached the outer defenses of the fortress. They poured into the hall in a torrent of madness and violence, but the Primarch's presence alone altered the battlefield. Waves of psychic energy erupted from him, throwing chaos cultists into walls, shattering their weapons mid-air and reducing the strongest to mere ash and shadow. Bolters fired, but every shot seemed guided by the Primarch's will, unerringly finding their mark with a precision that defied even the squad's trained instincts. The battle became a spectacle of power and terror, a demonstration of why the Emperor had hidden this son from history. Yet even in his fury, the Primarch showed glimpses of judgment. He did not kill indiscriminately, instead striking at those who threatened the Imperium, yet leaving openings for those who might yet be spared. Librarian Corvan, sensing the depths of the Primarch's mind, realized that this was a being of both intellect and instinct, a strategist capable of seeing countless potential futures at once. Kael and his squad moved alongside him, bolstered by his presence, fighting with renewed purpose. For the first time, the galaxy's true scale seemed to open before them, an understanding that this lost Primarch could reshape the outcome of wars, betrayals, and loyalties across the stars. When the last of the Chaos forces had fallen, the chamber fell silent once more. The Primarch, standing tall amidst the ruin, surveyed Kael and his squad with a mixture of curiosity and authority. "You have awakened me," he said, his voice calm now, almost contemplative. "And yet you have yet to understand the choices that must be made. The galaxy teeters on a knife's edge, and I must decide where my loyalty lies." The squad understood immediately. The story of the lost Primarch was no longer about discovery alone. It was about the consequences of his return. Every action they had taken, every battle fought, had led to this moment, and the choices made here would echo across the Imperium, altering destinies in ways they could scarcely imagine. Kael lowered his bolter, awe and fear mingling in equal measure. "Then we stand ready, my lord. Whatever path you choose, we fight beside you." The Primarch's gaze softened slightly, yet retained a weight that could crush planets and armies alike. Slowly he turned toward the exit of the hall, moving with purpose. The squad followed, realizing that the hunt had ended, but the true journey, the Primarch's return and the battles that would follow, was only just beginning. Outside, the sky of the desolate world shimmered with unnatural light, the winds carrying the whispers of destiny. The galaxy itself had shifted, and the lost Primarch had awakened to reclaim the legacy that had been denied him for millennia.
The skies above the desolate world had turned crimson, streaked with warp-tainted clouds and the fire of distant battles. Kyle and his squad emerged from the fortress alongside the lost Primarch, now fully awake, towering and radiating power that seemed to twist reality itself. The planet trembled beneath the weight of his presence, as though the land recognized the return of one long denied to history. From orbit, Imperial fleets and Chaos warbands alike observed the unfolding events, sensing the massive shift in galactic balance. Starships maneuvered into firing positions, but none dared attack directly. The Primarch's aura projected dominance, an invisible field that hinted at powers beyond comprehension. The hunt had ended, but the war for his allegiance, the struggle that would determine the fate of billions, was about to begin. The first to strike were the Chaos forces who had survived the fortress assault. Warp-fueled cruisers unleashed torrents of fire upon the planet, ripping through the atmosphere in an attempt to destroy the awakening Primarch before he could leave the surface. Bolts of lightning from the sky met orbital bombardments as the Primarch raised his hand, channeling an unseen force that disrupted incoming munitions. Massive shards of rock levitated and spun in a protective barrier around him, deflecting plasma and torpedoes alike. Kyle and his squad moved with precision, bolter and flamer fire cutting down Xenos reinforcements that attempted to breach the protective perimeter. For the first time, the squad truly understood the magnitude of their charge. They were fighting alongside a living legend, yet they also realized that even with him, survival was not guaranteed. In orbit, fleets clashed as the Imperium scrambled to respond. Battleships engaged in brutal exchanges with Chaos vessels, unleashing torrents of macro-cannons and torpedo salvos that lit the void like supernovae. The Primarch's psychic influence reached upward, a silent force guiding Imperial ships with uncanny precision while sowing discord among the enemy ranks. Chaos commanders, sensing a power they could neither control nor predict, began retreating or turning on one another, fracturing their own cohesion. From the surface, Kyle watched as warp storms tore open above the battlefield, bending space and time in fleeting glimpses, revealing the terrifying consequences of awakening a Primarch long hidden from the galaxy. The Primarch moved through the battlefield, a storm incarnate, striking with both intelligence and fury. His blows shattered tanks, ripped apart war engines, and cleaved through armor that no mortal could penetrate. Yet even in the chaos of combat, he exercised judgment. Cultists who had shown potential for redemption were spared. Entire units of enemy forces were sent fleeing without direct slaughter, as if the Primarch were measuring the morality of each act. Kyle's squad fought in tandem, following commands wordlessly, their morale bolstered by his presence. Every action seemed guided by an unseen hand, a strategy that spanned ground, sea, and sky, binding the conflict together into a single, terrifyingly beautiful sequence of war.
Amidst the carnage, the Primarch paused, sensing a deeper threat, the shadow of the warp itself, stirred by centuries of secrecy and manipulation. From the heart of the warp, monstrous entities began to manifest, drawn by his awakening. Immense, nightmarish creatures clawed into reality, warping the battlefield with each step. The Primarch's psychic resonance surged, creating a sphere of energy that contained their arrival long enough for Kyle and his squad to maneuver into strategic positions. Librarian Corvan directed the psychic flow, synchronizing with the Primarch, their combined power pushing back against the corruption that sought to claim the world. It was a battle not merely of soldiers and weapons, but of ideologies, of destiny, and of the very fabric of the galaxy itself. In the midst of this maelstrom, Kyle realized that the Primarch's return was changing more than the battlefield. It was reshaping alliances, ambitions, and fear. Imperial commanders, previously cautious, now acted with renewed vigor, emboldened by the presence of the Emperor's lost son. Entire Chaos warbands faltered, torn between retreat and reckless aggression, their cohesion shattered by the aura of power radiating from the Primarch. On the planet below, civilians and surviving forces watched, understanding instinctively that history was being rewritten. The lost Primarch was not just a weapon or a soldier, he was a symbol, a force that could inspire loyalty or terror in equal measure, and his choices would ripple across the stars for decades, perhaps centuries. The climax of the battle came as the largest Chaos warship attempted a direct orbital assault, descending through the atmosphere in a storm of fire and energy. The Primarch raised both hands, and the very ground trembled as psychic and physical power intertwined. A wave of force erupted outward, tearing the ship apart mid-descent, sending fragments crashing into the frozen plains. Lightning danced across the sky, and the surviving Chaos forces on the surface were thrown into disarray, routed by the overwhelming presence of a being they had long sought to control or destroy. Kyle and his squad pressed forward, advancing through the battlefield with purpose, their bolters carving paths through what remained of the enemy. As the last of the Chaos forces fell into retreat, the Primarch turned to Kyle and his squad, his eyes reflecting both war and contemplation. "The galaxy has shifted," he said, his voice carrying across the plains, strong yet calm. "The Imperium may yet endure, if its leaders understand what has returned to them. But know this, my loyalty is not bound by oath alone. I serve no one blindly. The choices I make will be my own, and all who follow must be ready to accept their consequences." The squad nodded, understanding the weight of those words.
They had helped awaken a force that could save or destroy the galaxy, and their actions, while heroic, were only part of a much larger narrative. As the skies cleared and the fires of battle died down, the lost Primarch stood atop a shattered hill, looking toward the horizon. Below him, Kyle squad regrouped, exhausted but alive, their mission complete. Yet the universe felt changed. The stars themselves seemed to shimmer differently, aware now of a power long hidden. Across the Imperium, word would spread of his return, sowing hope, fear, and curiosity in equal measure. The lost Primarch's presence had rewritten the rules, and the galaxy, for all its wars and corruption, would never again be the same. In the quiet that followed, Kyle realized the truth that had guided them through fire and shadow. History was alive, malleable, and waiting for those brave enough to claim it. The Primarch had awakened, the Imperium had survived, yet the real war, the war for allegiance, morality, and destiny, was only just beginning. Outside the remnants of the battlefield, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what the lost Primarch would do next. And in that moment, Kyle understood that they had witnessed the beginning of a new age, one that would be written not in ink, but in fire, blood, and the indomitable will of a being whose very existence could change everything.